people, we've got to fight. Jean Petro, you see us. Oguo, we've got to fight. Let's go fight. Oh, black people, we've got to fight. Zumbi, you see us. Oguo, we've got to fight. Let's go fight. Oh, black people, we've got to fight. Yes, Santewa, you see us. Oh, we've got to fight. Let's go fight. Oh, black people, we've got to fight. Bookman, you see us. Oh, we've got to fight. Let's go fight. Oh,
we have to have the courage to construct our own reality. And that's what Garvey was talking about. Because he said he looked around, he didn't see what he thought should be there, and so what did he do? He didn't get depressed about it. He didn't get defeated about it. He said, I'm gonna build the government that we need to have. Ooh, where do you get that kind of boldness from? So we gotta go all the way back to Garvey, who said he would come again. He said he would be here with us, no matter how long it took. And I'm telling you that the way he comes back is in our work. Not honoring him in words, pomp and all of that stuff, but honoring him through doing what he did. How many of us have the courage to do that? The man took on the world for us and in our name. And then we come to Sodai. And in this presentation of the paradigm, I'm going to make this like what it is we want to reach. So Sodai is translated clear word in Dogana language. And I use it to mean that here we gain understanding. This is sight with understanding. And it is seeing beyond what just we think we see with this physical thing. It's seeing beyond that. And so we gain vision, because that's what vision is. With vision, you've got to be able to use the imagination informed by the African spirit. And Brother Amos, who I work very closely with, was a good friend of mine. He taught me, and he would talk about imagination. Image a nation. Do you see? But that's got to be part of vision. To be a visionary, you got to see beyond this box here. You got to see beyond the ma'afa. You got to see what is it that our people rightfully should have, and that's what Garvey did. Garvey had a vision.
Wow, greetings, family, greetings.
Greetings, the Kimbunga media family. Welcome to the Out of Noise Revolutionary Minds show.
Well, welcome to the Revolutionary Minds study session. I am Stella B, your host, and this is
Medai, the Lyrical Alchemist.
Okay, and we welcome you, family, for joining us today. So those of you who are very familiar, every single month we study for the Revolutionary Minds project or study session. I don't know what to call it now. We study a revolutionary mind, a powerful Pan-African great leader, and some of them haven't actually been Pan-African technically, but a great leader that has had a big and powerful impact on us as a community. And then we put their stories, their history into, or their his and her stories into poetry. And it's a very powerful way of learning about these individuals and also sharing our learning through the spoken word. And then we get to perform what we've put together as poetry at Auntie Jean's African Cultural Market, which is a monthly event taking place every third Sunday of the month. So the reason why we come here on Kimbunga Media is to let you know what we've learned about that individual or those individuals, those powerful greats, share some poetry potentially if we've written something in time, and invite you to come along to Auntie Jean's so you can hear the powerful poetry and experience the market for yourselves. So what's special about this month's market?
So Auntie Jean's African Culture Market is happening in Catford at the Calabash Centre from 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. Auntie Jean's African Culture Market has been running for 10 years, so it's a 10-year special. And we have the 3 heavyweight kings who have all been, well, 2 of them have been a part of Auntie Jean's as well since 2014. And the 3 heavyweight kings refers to the Black History Man, Robin Walker, refers to the founder of Black History Walks, Tony Warner, and the investigator, Andrew Mohammed. But Andrew Mohammed is in the Gambia with Royal Sankofa Estate. And so, yeah, check out the investigator, check out the Royal Sankofa Estate. What is going on there is absolutely amazing. He also has a show that he does every single week called The Hidden Truth, so check him out. But due to the fact that he's unable to make it this time around, Auntie Jean has brought in another heavyweight king by the name of Nubian Jack. So if you don't know about Nubian Jack is the one responsible for recognising the greats of Britain, the Black British greats, or Black people or African people who have done great works that need to be recognised in the United Kingdom, and they are recognised by a blue plaque. So they once lived here, and the plaque will be there, and it will be a little small short bio about them and the dates of their birth and when they were there as well.
Like Winifred, who we discovered in Brixton the other day. Winifred Atwell, sorry, who was a top huge artist back in the day in England, who won so many accolades. A Black pianist, concert pianist. She was amazing.
She went platinum.
And yeah, so you should check out her story. But yeah, you'll see these plaques around, and you'll be able to kind of, in the future, I wonder if you'll be able to I'm going to suggest this to him when I see him on Sunday, and he'll be like, you should put some tech to it so you can scan it with your phone and then
AI. I mean, not AI, AR.
AR,
augmented reality, yeah.
Augmented reality, and it kind of pops up with her image or their image and stuff like that. Ooh, ideas be flowing. So yeah,
you heard that here first.
It's recorded. No one can tell me nothing about nothing. I actually said it. So so today we are talking in general. So this month, what we're going to do in poetry is actually celebrate all of the range of over 15 revolutionary minds that we've actually studied. So everyone had a choice. They can pick who they wanted to pick out of the list, which will go down in a sec, and choose who they want to actually do their poetry about. So even if you are a newcomer and you want to come and share some poetry, you might have some poetry about one of these people that we run down the list for. And then we're also going to talk about Thomas Sankara, the late great Thomas Sankara. his image is up behind you there. He is just such a beautiful history, a beautiful, powerful, inspiring history. It's no sadness to it. It's actually as you really connect with him as a human being and what he stood for and what he achieved, you should be inspired. And till today, he still inspires that nation. His legacy lives on through the actions of those who are following in suit to do similar things right now as we speak. And it's just evidence. He's evidence that, you know, we don't have to be living in the ways that we're living. It's just about having an attitude that is about everybody, is about love for everybody and feeling equality. He really did stand for that word of equality and so-called democracy that we were supposed to be living in. He was anti-class, you know, he's not about classism, and that is truly reflected in his actions taken. Really frustratingly, as with a lot of these leaders, what they try and do when you try and look up information to the mainstream, you'll get a version of the story that tries to paint this little bit of a story that's like, oh, they were a little bit dictatory. They got a bit, what's the word they always use?
Dictator is the word.
They use that word, but they don't often normally associate that with Thomas Sankara because it's very difficult to do so. But there's another word that they use about, I can't think of the word now. It's going straight out of my head, to try and say that he was authoritative. I think that's the word. And wanted to kind of have his way or no way kind of attitude towards everybody. But it's just a military background meant that there were certain things that he could enforce, like rules and regulations about, you know, ownership of what he called extravagance, things that weren't needed. You know, why do you need to live in this amazing 5-star house just because you are a government official and your rest of your people aren't living like that? And it's a waste of money if we want to put money into actually building a nation. You need that, all that resource needs to go back into building a nation. He had that attitude. So, you know, some of these little clips that you might find when they're using words like that, you have to kind of sift through that, and it's a disrespect on who he was and what he really truly stood for, because he was very passionate about human beings, to the extent where I learned today he wouldn't even have his image up. He wasn't really for that. He was like, if we're going to do that, we need, you know, 7 million Thomas Sankara images of everybody, because everybody is this. I am everybody, everybody is me. That was the attitude and approach that he took towards everything he was achieving, and I love that. So yeah, we're going to talk more about him, but we're going to go into the different people that we've studied. So you remember the list, the long list?
Yeah, so all right. Normally, we have Nate the lyricist that joins us. So shout out to Nate the lyricist. He is the one who came up with this concept, Revolutionary Minds. And basically, he brought it to Auntie Jean's African culture market. So essentially, he was like, he fell in love with the place like we did. And he was like, what value can I bring? And basically, he brought Revolutionary Minds. The Revolutionary Minds is the event that happens at Auntie Jean's. And we have a study group on WhatsApp. So if you enjoy this and you're not able to make it to Auntie Jean's, don't feel like you can't join our study group on WhatsApp. It is a place where we get to share information, have discussions about who we're studying. So we started off actually with Patrice Lumumba. That was the first person we did, I believe. Patrice Lumumba was the first elected Prime Minister of the Democratic Republic of Congo. And we studied him, we studied the time he was around, and then, yeah, we turned his life into spoken word. And what we see today, like with a lot of these leaders, we can, if we view the world in timelines, we can see that things could have gone a different direction to what it is today. And the reasons why they were assassinated was to prevent it from going down those directions. Patrice Lumumba, actually, off our list of the leaders or revolutionary minds that we have studied is one that had the shortest time in power. And we pretty much think that's because he was the leader of the Democratic Republic of Congo. So over the past year or so, there's been more news that has hit, I wouldn't even say mainstream, but it's grown in attention of what is happening in that country. The reason why it's such a crucial place is because of its wealth. The technology that we enjoy today, be it these devices that we are connected with, or planes or transport, etc., etc. Literally, the minerals, vast majority of them, come from Congo. And in order for these industries and these ways of life to be fueled, that country's been, and actually, do you know what? This is the narrative that is always said, but even more important than that is the fact that in order for the entities to have extreme wealth, let's put it that way, for them to have gross levels of wealth, they have to exploit Congo, and we get the technology as a result of that. Because some of these corporations are, their net worth joint is in the trillions, and that's at the expense of the people in Congo. Patrice Lumumba.
I'm just going to open up the chat as well.
That was there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. If anyone wants to comment, then please say hi. But yeah, Patrice Lumumba. You want to say anything about Patrice Lumumba?
Yeah. I learned when we did study him. I learned about his wife. Who was widowed when he was assassinated after a week in power, 2 weeks. Patrice Lumumba, how long was he in power?
10 weeks.
Oh, it was 10 weeks.
He was in power for 10 weeks.
Yeah. After 10 weeks. But so she was in protest of his kidnapping and then subsequent death. Protested in the streets of Kinshasa. She bore her breasts and walked through the streets of Kinshasa, leading a fleet of women, not just herself, to protest against his murder and the treatment that he received. So walking towards the, I guess what you would call the House of Parliaments. So that was very interesting to find out about, because it actually led me towards thinking about the wives of these great leaders and their story and who they are, because she continued in the kind of struggle and the fight against injustice and what's happening in Congo till she died in 2014. She actually died in 2014. Also, I've discovered there is 27 years gap between Patrice Lumumba's death and the death of Thomas Sankara. So he died in he was killed in 1983. No, he came to power in
Sankara was killed in 1987.
1987, sorry. He came to power in 1983, but he was killed in 1987. And that was 27 years after the killing of Patrice Lumumba. And they, as they did with Patrice Lumumba in that disgusting way of trying to almost like kill a spirit. So they chopped up his body, and they did the same with Thomas Sankara, and they buried him in a shallow grave. So these rituals don't work, is what these stories teach us. They don't work. They don't kill an ideology, an idea. So we've already been fed through the people. And what was also very special about Thomas Sankara, which we'll come to in a bit, is that leadership. He was a very, very much a chosen leader. And in fact, when he was, when they tried to stop his initial kind of rise into leadership position, the people protested against that. It was the people that made him actually come into power, because he was so popular with them, and continues to be to this day. They say every single home carries an image of him, ironically, after him saying that he didn't want that. But he was a natural leader, and he's actually a chosen leader. So, but yeah, Patrice Lumumba's wife was an interesting way that I looked at the poetry, and that's what I did. I'll get a thumbs up there. A melanated goddess, welcome. Peace and powers to you as well. Lovely to have you here. Please do feel free to comment, people. It's lovely to have you in the space, sharing with us. Let us know any information that you know about any of these leaders that we mentioned. We love to learn. We love to express through poetry. It's the best way to keep these legacies alive, and it's the best way to inspire more of the power that we bring forth for change to affect this planet this beautiful planet that we live on together. So yeah, that's what I wanted to add.
Okay, yeah. I mean, that was a beautiful element that Stella brought to the Revolutionary Minds studying, because there can be a lot of focus on the leaders and not the people around them, especially their families, actually, the people that they share a household with, the people that most know them intimately. So their wives or their husbands or their children, like those people who know them on that interpersonal level. Beyond the grandeur of the icon that they are.
Yeah.
So it was good that you brought that in on, and you've done that. When we go through them, you mention others that you did, but and the synergy between these leaders as well. They're chosen, they're divinely chosen, and what we mean by that is that they have the characteristics, they have the personality, they have the bravery to be a leader. They have the heart, the love to be a leader of millions of people, essentially. And not why we specify Pan-African is because they weren't divided by the groups the geographical location of the people that they led. They would have been anywhere. They could have been anywhere where there are African people, they would have done the same thing. And generally speaking, a lot of them, when they were leading in their own nation, their thought process was beyond that nation. Yeah. So Patrice Lumumba, you can say, was, I guess, a ideological child, or ideological younger of Kwame Nkrumah, who is an ideological younger of, or child actually, of Marcus Garvey. These are ideologies that are shared. So Lumumba wasn't just thinking about DRC, he was thinking about Africa as a whole. So was Kwame Nkrumah. So was Thomas Sankara. Yeah. So each of them, they had a vision, massive vision
for
Africa and Africans. And that way of thinking is special. And that's why I say it's chosen, because the vast majority of people don't think in those ways, don't have the capacity to think in those ways.
Yeah, it can be beyond them.
It can be beyond them to have such a vision. Can you imagine thinking for over 1 billion people, the destinies of over 1 billion people, the responsibility that carries, and the level and willingness to sacrifice, because they know before, during, that their lives are at risk. They know that. And they know that their families are actually targets as well. They know all of this, but it doesn't stop them from continuing. So those are chosen, divinely chosen leaders. So with Patrice Lumumba, he was very charismatic. He was a very popular brother, but when he gained consciousness and he developed political new, that's when he took it on to, because I say this because in the earlier of his years, he was selling alcohol. That was his thing. He was a salesman. And then when he got his political new and a conscious awareness, that's when he drove towards being a political leader. And he had the bravery. This is what stood him apart from the other Congolese political people. What flagged him up was he'd done a speech. So the arrogance of European nations till today, but at the time of independence, it would be like, so Belgium were like, we brought you infrastructure, we brought you up into civilization, now go on and run with everything that we have taught you. That was the narrative that they were putting out there. And in front of the King of Belgium, Lumumba stood up and was like, no, this is the truth. You brutalized us and etc. etc. Now we have the ability to shape our own future, and we are going to do it and such. And Congo, as well as the rest of Africa, is our time now, essentially. The CIA, MI6, the UN, and the Belgians all conspired to have him assassinated. And it was the Belgian soldiers that committed. So they used Congolese traitors to capture him. Mobutu, who took over, he was responsible for that. But those other factions, small-minded imbeciles. And then they assassinated him. But then it's the Belgian soldiers that did the ritualistic stuff that Stella was referring to earlier. And it was only 3 years ago where his family was returned his tooth. So between 1960 till 2021, I believe, they kept his tooth. And there's a documentary where one of the Belgian soldiers, old in age now, recalling it in the demonic way that he did, you know. So yeah, Patrice Lumumba though, as Stella said, you cannot eliminate the ideology, nor can you eliminate the spirit. You cannot eliminate the spirit.
Yeah.
The soul lives on regardless. So
next, so we did. I think we did Winnie Mandela after Patrice Lumumba. We'll try and do it in order.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter actually. Winnie Mandela, powerhouse. So she lived to the sweet elderly age. She died very recently, actually. 2020? 2019?
Yeah, around that time.
Is a daughter that died recently, actually, far too young. But she was a powerhouse whose story they've tried to twist and turn as well to try and steer.
2018, yes, you're right.
Yeah, steer folks away from her story, because she will just inspire every young lady to be just like her. She was a fire powerhouse woman. So she started off as the first ever social worker. So, you know, we're living in times that came of modernity, of the visions of these white people coming to fruition in these nations, these African nations. So even though we're so-called independent, they put all these rules and regulations in South Africa about you know, whites and blacks and coloured people, so segregation, apartheid, so-called. And so she was the first ever black social worker as a result. And she met Nelson Mandela, quite young. They fell in love. So my poem was in the perspective of her, that love and connection, but also just recognising her time that she came in. She was born in 1936. And actually 1936 was the year that His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie went to Bath as well. So what we found with all of these people that we've been studying, there's a link, like numerology link, sort of just everything is linked. And it's quite amazing, really. But yeah, and so my poem kind of journeyed on where she came through, and then what she ends up being responsible for, and like you said, the stuff they're made up of. She incorporates all those elements that you just mentioned there. A huge passion for the people, very charismatic, very beautiful, a natural leader, but fierce warrior. You know, she's not having it. You know, she wasn't having it. She stood up against those police, those SS, what they called police officers that would sort of enforce their disgusting law about the blacks, the Bantus, who they call them. And sort of, and we're killing them, you know. And then during that learning, we learn about the kind of lineage that leads up to the Mandela. So there's not only them as freedom fighters. You have Steve Biko, who's another one we.
Well, it's the same time. Steve Biko's
Yeah.
the same time.
Yeah,
So-
but no, it's the same. It's not the same time because his fight. When he dies, they kind of are like, it's like a whole different journey that it goes on as well after his death.
I think Steve Biko's younger than Nelson, you know. So Nelson was the big figure, and Steve Biko was moving around the same time.
Okay.
But I think I can't remember. But Nelson might have been in prison or just about to be in prison when Steve Biko was killed.
Right.
If my memory serves me right.
Okay.
Yes, I think off the top of my head, we'll check it out. Fact check, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I gotta check that because I don't know about that. But yeah, regardless, so Winnie powerhouse. She became, advocate for women's rights as well. Later on, she never stopped doing the fight, on the front line in these different arenas and areas of effect. She what was I gonna say? She could pick up a machete, yes, but she could also do a rousing speech and get everybody going on the front line. She was actually tortured as well for I can't remember how many days. She was locked up and tortured and beaten in room 101, and she suffered so greatly, but she never folded in her strength and what she stood for. She really did suffer. She had one husband and she never got to see him for 27 years and had to raise her two daughters on her own, but she still was on the front line during that. So really admired her story and
her resilience.
And
yeah, no, she survived. So yeah, in terms of dates, Nelson's a lot older. Nelson was born in 1918. Winnie was born in 1936, as you said. Steve Biko was born in 1942. So Steve Biko was killed in 1977. Nelson Mandela was in prison in 1962.
Okay.
So Nelson Mandela was already nationally known before, or internationally known, in fact, before Steve Biko had his rise.
Okay.
But we got Steve Biko next.
Yeah.
But yeah, Winnie Mandela, everything Stella said was Winnie. She was an educator as well, and she had a lot of she had a lot of young people that she catered for, and she saw the entire nation. This is why these revolutionary minds are so special. Again, she saw the entire nation as her responsibility, as a parent does to their children. And you have one person who's like of fire today, Julius Malema, who is another child, if you like, a political child of Winnie Mandela. So Winnie, she survived the.
But they character assassinate. That's the other thing.
They tried to character assassinate her. So,
because they don't even teach about her in schools in South Africa.
No, and what they did at the aftermath of the apartheid ending, which is key to note, there was no justice for what the European settlers, colonizers, did, for the wickedness that they committed upon the Africans. There was no justice for it. It was more a shift away from the political system that stopped and oppressed. So it stopped movement for Africans and also oppressing them. It stopped that. But economically, it didn't change a single thing. And a lot of concessions were made in a similar sort of fashion. It was kind of, the blueprint is there from when slavery was ended. Reparations was given to the slave masters. Similar sort of notion with the ending of the apartheid. Well, what they did have, what's it called? Reconciliation and justice, I guess, cases was against Winnie.
Yeah.
Winnie Mandela had to go through.
So they invented that law to kind of for war crimes and war criminals, you know, and you'll find that a lot of African and Arabic, I guess you could say as well, will get swooped up in those courtrooms to be reprimanded. I think
the ICC you're talking about.
Is it the ICC
the
that
International Criminal Court?
Is that the one that affected Winnie?
That's what would affect Arabs as well as Africans.
Okay,
right?
but what did affect Winnie?
That was the reconciliation and
so it was like,
that was in South Africa specifically.
Yeah. So, but I'm saying it's in the same world of those things. So where it's like we're looking to kind of appease these awful things that have been done. We're talking really brutal, evil stuff here. So we're on the surface just gonna give a kind of parade to make it look like we've really kind of addressed the issue of that and the seriousness of it, and then we'll put the black face as the main person that is going to take the brunt of those of that you know, punishment or humiliation, because with Winnie she shouldn't have been.
No,
she shouldn't have been brought forward in any of that. She had nothing to apologise for, because at the end of the day, self-defense is self-defense. When you're defending yourself against settlers who come in and are evilly killing your people, and then yes, you might have conspirators who are your people on the other team, on the other side, or helping the system out, who are caught in crossfire or whatever, but that's very few and far between when it comes to 16-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 14-year-olds, children that were killed at the hand of these officers who didn't get any of that reconciliation talk or anything, where they had to stand up and be questioned as Winnie was. It was almost like the whole thing was orchestrated and engineered for her to have that moment, so that the people can hear these specifically brutal stories and attach it to Winnie's legacy. Because as you'll go into her history, when you start trying to learn about her, those are the key things that will pop up, which is the story of the young child that was killed or kidnapped and then killed, who was said to be she said she did. It was nothing to do with her, but they put the whole blame on her.
And he was framed as a spy. He was framed as a governmental spy.
Yeah.
An agent, governmental agent.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to say is that it's disrespectful on multiple levels, because the people who are committing the oppression are not the ones being put in front of the camera. Winnie Mandela was not an oppressor. She was not oppressed. She was not a part of the system of oppression. So she was in fact somebody operating in self-defense. And this is what we find all the time. The person who's operating in self-defense against the perpetrators is the one that has to prove their morality and prove that they are not criminal, whereas the ones that are perpetrating the oppression don't have to face any of that. In fact, it is framed as mistakes were made. It's often spoken of that mistakes were made. These were the behaviors of the time, and now we've moved on, and we all have to move on together. It's kind of similar thing what they do, how they're shaping the Israel and Palestine thing. Palestine reacts to Israel. Well, certain segments of Palestine will react to the oppression that Israel is committing upon Palestine, but as it's framed, it's they're in the wrong for doing that, whereas Israel doesn't have to face up to anything. It's a similar sort of thing. Winnie Mandela is the one who now publicly has to explain herself for her behaviour, whereas the people that have committed the crimes, who committed the oppression, don't have to face up to anything.
Yeah. Exactly. So I'm going to shift it along, because I know we're going to talk about every single person in depth, because they're beautiful humans, and their stories are incredibly inspiring and worth spending the time on. But we do want to spend and deep dive a little bit with Thomas Sankara and share some words, because you've written an absolutely stunning poem about Thomas Sankara. And the other day I did a little thing. I've done some stuff in the past as well, but I did a little thing which was kind of just targeting Blaise Compaoré because that's where the poetry came. The treachery, but we wanted to alchemize that into something positive.
Okay, let's speed through then. So right, who next?
So we had Winnie, and then we had
Steve Biko. We mentioned him.
Biko.
Yeah.
And Steve Biko, again, his wife, very complex. So it's interesting learning about a character with layers. So with Steve Biko, he was a bit of a womanizer, a bit of a charmer, we'll just live with that. And so I did a perspective. I wanted to do a perspective from his wife originally anyway, and I still did do it. But in doing that, it was kind of like, she was
covered certain.
Yeah. So, but other than that, he was an avid. So they're all very amazing humans in terms of their intellect. So they all have this consistency with their intellect. They love to read. They love to study. As children, they're brilliant. They have like a special quality to them, all of them. So I think Patrice did poetry. As we know, we're going to go on to Marcus Garvey. He also did poetry. But so Steve Biko, avid student. The problem came, as with Thomas Sankara, we can discover later, when you're passionate about humans and you care, you're the disruptor in the class. You're an issue, especially when the colonizers are still there and they're the ones running the classrooms. So they want that energy out. They want to stifle that. They want to stop that. So they make it difficult, but they can't, because obviously Thomas Sankara, for example, his parents were of well-to-do. They could afford to move him to another school. Whereas if there was another person that could done that to, that would have potentially been very harmful to their education. But Steve Biko, his brother got accused of something to do with freedom fighting as well. And I think they put it on Steve Biko at the time. Long story short, he just was a disruptor in terms of the fight and the struggle. And he was, advocating for the rights of Blacks, and he was actually pushing so even further, because the liberals can be an issue too. The liberals, the ones that say that they care about the world and equality and all of that, and they come with this, yes, we're liberals too. We're all together. It's us, yeah, way. And they're not. They're the worst. And he was really good at pointing that out as well. There was a NUS, I think they're called. They were like an organization, Newcastle, I think, and they weren't doing anything. They weren't doing enough. It's like you're too relaxed about this, and you're still doing things like booking hotels and staying in these nice places while the Blacks have to suffer, and we're all on this front line together. And he would point that out, and and they, that's a serious freedom fighter there. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't just all lip service with him at all, even though he was basically killed for being a writer. He wasn't doing half of the stuff that Nelson Mandela and Winnie Mandela were doing in terms of the front line, actually going with machetes and doing stuff. He was writing about stuff. He was gathering momentum amongst the artists and amongst the protesters, the key speakers, the public speakers. He was a very gifted speaker. So go ahead, sorry.
Black consciousness was his thing.
Yeah.
Black consciousness was his thing, and essentially, and education was his means of reaching the people and educating them of Black consciousness. If you know thyself, basically, if you know who you are, then you can basically navigate this world in the best way that benefits you. So his attention or his championing and labeling of know thyself, Black consciousness, essentially, was what Steve Biko was about. And, getting that into educational spaces, getting academic students to think in those fashions, very dangerous. Another one who was brutally murdered, in a horrible fashion. There's a film called Cry Freedom, where Steve Biko is acted by Denzel Washington. I recommend it. You should watch it. But yeah, check out Steve Biko. Profound, conscious, intellectual thinker. They killed.
Yeah.
To stop his message of Black consciousness. And as I was saying earlier, 1962, Nelson Mandela is in prison. 27 years later, he's let out. Within that time, you have Steve Biko that is rising up. And Steve Biko is then, in 1977, is brutally killed. But the fight goes on till this day because, like I was saying earlier, Julius Malema is a brainchild of Winnie Mandela, and I'm very conscious of us who know about our history to also recognise the works of those who are doing the works now. So, you want to talk about next?
Okay. I was just reading a comment. Greetings, me Idren, me sister, and the yard. Yes. And welcome. And so what did we do? Did we do Jean-Jacques Dessalines next?
Let's talk about Jean-Jacques Dessalines.
Okay, so Jean-Jacques Dessalines. I really wish I could speak multiple languages because I love languages, especially I want to learn African languages. But the Haitian Revolution. Okay, so as we start, because we still have to finish with the Haitian Revolution because there's other people that we have to explore over there. And
who would you like to explore?
Oh, definitely Cecile Fatiman. Most certainly Sister Toya, who raised Jean-Jacques. Oh, definitely Toussaint. Definitely Bookman. You know, like, and then there's more. Like when you, I think, Bello, what's her name? The doctor. She's got a book out, and there's just many different people involved in the revolution that have to be talked about and learned.
Well, this to know, because you mentioned Toya, I'm not going to pronounce her second name because it's not strong in my head and I'm going to mash it up. But basically, the one who raised Jean-Jacques Dessalines is Nate. So this is the thing we're talking about as you'll get the gist. The revolutionary minds is who we focus on, but we focus on the people around them and the events of that time. So our spoken word poetry is not necessarily only about them or centered on them. So in Nate's verse, when we covered Jean-Jacques Dessalines, he decided to focus on Toya, who was a Dahomey warrior. But Nate's not here to talk on her, so Jean-Jacques, would you want to...
Jean-Jacques Dessalines founded Haiti. He renamed it from what it was called to Haiti. Haiti was the original word. I can't remember what it means now, but there's the people of Haiti who were the original people before the Africans were brought there. So he put that name back in there. And it's been 266 years, I think it's 266 years since his birth. And I think him as a character, as you've just explained, he was born into slavery, and by the age of 30, he had conducted the biggest revolution any African would have ever seen in terms of reclaiming or claiming a nation.
He was slaved until 33.
Until 33 years old.
33 years old. At 33 years old, he was still enslaved.
Okay.
From that period until 45, and this aspect really is inspirational on many levels, because some of us, we reach a certain age, we think, I'm too old, you settle for life. And when you think about Dessalines, he was enslaved up until 33 years old.
Yeah, that's
and a lot of us will hit 33 years old, or we hit 30, or even hit a lot younger than that, and just give up on life and think like, this is my lot. This is it. This is it for me. I'm if you're on a 9 to 5 or whatever, you're thinking, that's it. This is me. All my dreams are now gone. Whereas you have somebody who is enslaved up until 33, and he has this is what I'm saying about this revolutionary mind, is the character. He has the character to fight for freedom, not just for himself, but his entire people. And Toya was instrumental in that because it was divinity. It was, long story short, she was a Dahomey warrior who came across his mother who was about to give birth, and she saw this as a sign that she needed to be around. So she helped his mum raise him into the warrior that he was to become. And she actually lived to see the revolution. So her story is amazing.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's so juicy. Like, I mean, is that the way to put it? But that should be a film. That's a movie. Like, come on.
She was recognized as a duchess. So she was in high regard in Dahomey, became enslaved, then she regained that high regard. And with John Jack Dessalines, it was, like I said, he was enslaved up until 33 years old. By 45 years old, he became emperor of the first Black Republic in the Western Hemisphere, and also the first nation to abolish slavery. So when like family, you listening to this, when people want to say about Britain this, Britain that, the recognize that it's the Haitian that are the first ones to abolish slavery, and they are the ones actually. So look at the timeline. 1804, Dessalines, after Toussaint, is double-crossed by Napoleon. And I say double-crossed even though they were enemies. Basically what had happened was Toussaint Louverture leads Haiti to defeat Napoleon's France. Napoleon then reaches out to Toussaint and says, come to France, we are brothers, let's talk it out. Toussaint goes to France, gets imprisoned, and they leave him in there to die. Dessalines recognizes that, and Dessalines then goes on to defeat Napoleon's France. Then the British that somehow gained morality a few years later defeated them, and then defeated the Spanish. So militarily defeated the British, defeated France's Napoleon, defeated the Spanish. That is what Dessalines did. Dessalines militarily, Haiti developed the skills that they could not be defeated militarily. The 3 years later, so that's 1804. 3 years later is when the British abolished the slave trade. So there's a timeline to that. Also, it's also key to note, 1776, United States of America becomes independent. The 13 states though, right? Only 13 states. There's what, 50 states today? 13 states became independent because when you dig deeper, it's something else. When you dig deeper, it's something else. There's a reason why they don't got a monarchy. I'll leave it at that. So the 13 states were independent from England after their war. Haiti becomes independent a few decades later. France, now losing their massive economic fruit, if you like, or economic benefits that they had controlling Haiti from the slavery there, they now they're forced into a position where they have to sell the third that they own of United States. So United States of America now becomes a lot bigger because they've now sold a third, France has now sold a third of it to them. So these are the knock-on effects of the Haitian Revolution. And with Dessalines, we championed him because he led. He's the one who got to the finish line of that. Unfortunately, his death is shrouded in a bit of mystery. It was like Christian zealots of our own, actually. He ended his life. And then subsequently, weak leaders came in and then.
But also, they did the ritual thing to him. According to Bella, she said they also did that to him. So there's something about that
they're trying to do, with that. And then subsequently Haiti was forced to pay reparations back to France for loss of slaves, which they did for over 100 years. And the United States then gave them a slave loan that they had to pay the remainder of it, and Haiti are in a position today because of France and the United States as a result. That's Celine's.
Yeah.
Jean-Jacques
Dessalines. We did Amanirenas.
Kandake Amanirenas.
So Kandake Amanirenas, she ruled between she ruled around the time of the 25th century BCE, which is alongside the timeline of Cleopatra in Egypt, which had become at that point, and Mark Antony. So after that, you have the time of Augustus Caesar, who is conquering Britain and this place and that place and Rome, and then here we have this African warrior queen who's like, no, you can't go further down to our part. I'm the queen of Meroe, kingdom of Kush. You're trying to put tax upon my people. Hell no. So she basically wages war against them, and they defeat them. It's a 5-year war period, and evidence of them. One of the mastery things that they did is lure while they were lured out of their position in Egypt for a period, her people were able to go in, her ministry were able to go in, and as part of what they did is they hacked off the head of his statue and brought it back to one of their temples. And that statue head is actually in the British Museum, so you can actually visit it for yourself. That was at the hand of an African warrior queen called Kandake Amanirenas. So so she was like, if you now we're gonna go pray, we're gonna step over your head, bro. Like, you're taking the mick by thinking you can come and tax our people and come and invade our lands. In the end, they had to sign a peace treaty to kind of settle the score, to say, okay, fine, we'll leave you rest. And that's why in that part now, Sudan, you have so many pyramids that were built, because in the time of peace, you will see the golden era, the things will be existing, because there is no war, there is no stress, there's just ample abundance. And so you can be creative and you can build. And so that's why you have so many beautiful ornaments and things created and crafted out of that part of the world. So she was beautiful to study, because Nat came up with that one for our study month that month. And it was like a powerful ending, like a lot of these stories, unfortunately, can end in a way that can discourage people from wanting to do the works of being up front and on the front line. But her story is deep because she's the one-eyed Kandake. She had one eye. She said to either have been born with one eye or have been lost an eye on the battlefield. But nevertheless, she had one eye. She lost her son on the battlefield and her husband, but yet she still maintained the warrior spirit and energy to carry on the fight. And so these stories help us to know that, look, bravery is a big part of the revolution. And and women and men, we fight side by side. She survived and her husband and son didn't. So it says a lot. So I just think study Kandake Amanirenas.
Well, the other thing I want to add to that is Augustus Caesar, just for context of who he actually was, he's the pinnacle of Rome. So as Caesar, there's no one higher. No other Caesar got to his heights, and he's recognized as the wealthiest Caesar, and one of the, in fact, number two to Mansa Musa, as the wealthiest person that ever lived. That's that Caesar. Mm. So he's the Caesar that comes after Julius, and he's the Caesar that conquers Egypt, the one that forces Cleopatra and Mark Antony to commit suicide. They end their life because he's then taken their land. That's that Caesar. The Caesar that the month of August, that's in honor of him.
Yeah.
That's the Caesar that Kandake Amanirenas defeated.
Yeah.
For context.
Come on.
So for you know, it's very important to highlight that, because we're talking about the heights, the very heights of Rome, the unstoppable. In fact, his Rome was the Rome that was considered unstoppable. But when an unstoppable force meets an immovable energy, that's what the immovable energy in this case defeated the unstoppable force, and that was Kandake Amanirenas. Kandake Amanirenas was that. How it ended, she sent golden arrows to him and said, if you want peace, then accept this as a gift. If you want war, you're going to need them. And by that time, Augustus Caesar accepted this was a formidable, a foe too formidable, even for Rome.
Yeah, powerful story. And then we have, oh gosh, who do we have?
We can go to Booker T.
Booker T, Washington. So I even spoke about him the other day at your niece's, your gorgeous niece's birthday party, second birthday party, to a gentleman. We're speaking about these things that we've been doing, and he said exactly what we all assumed to know about Booker T. Washington. Oh, he's an Uncle Tom, and
accommodationist.
He's accommodationist. He's this, and he did. You know, he just wanted us to be workers, and but you know, indentured slave. Couldn't be further from the truth. And I think this is part of why these studies are so important, because we are also reclaiming the narrative that has been taken away. We're redressing these people and putting them actually where they're supposed to be placed. Because when the Westerners tell your story, they're obviously going to put it in ways that keeps you distant from them. If you hear about an Uncle Tom, why are you going to study an Uncle Tom? Really, why are you going to give that any energy? You're not. But if you hear about someone who actually was a strategist, who worked his way into all the inner circles, who, you know, created the Tuskegee Institution, which was more than just a college or a study space. It was an actual sustainable way of living. It was an actual demonstration of a blueprint or blackprint that Marcus Garvey was inspired by. And when you deep it in that way, now you're tuned in. Now you're like, who was Booker T. Washington, and what can I learn from this man? Another one born into slavery, another one who did believe in having the woman right by his side, demonstrated in the choices of women that he was married to. He was married 3 times. 2 of them unfortunately passed away. So we do get, I really loved learning about him and writing about his story. It's like an eye-opener and demonstrative of what we need to do as strategists who are vying for change and wanting to fix a society, our society, and give ourselves empowerment, because that is the key tool needed to help us to lift the boot of oppression off of our necks, because power is the only weapon that you can really have against that. And power comes from wealth, and wealth generation comes from do for self attitudes, production, and that comes from understanding the arable land. The layers and depth of Booker T. Washington is like, there's a lot there. It was so juicy. Next, who else did we do?
Well, I'm gonna say my.
Okay, sorry.
So Booker T. Washington, from my point of view.
Yeah.
As he was a chess master. Let's put it that way. He was the child of an African woman, but also of an enslaver, and he was passionate about his people. He was extremely intelligent and charming, and the reason why he was characterized as an accommodationist was because a European American took hold of his story and labeled him as such. When we go into the story, and give thanks to Dr. Tyreen Wright, who has also been on the Kimbunga media show, because we learned a lot from her. In fact, in the early days, I'll be honest, I was of studying Booker T. I was like, wow, why are we do? What are you sure he's Pan African? I had to do a little dive, and then found, he actually did stuff for Liberia.
And he advocated against what was Napoleon, what Leopold was doing as well in Congo.
Yes, he advocated against.
Wrote a letter
to the horrors that Leopold was committing, greater horrors than that of the Holocaust. What happened in Liberia, France, I believe it was, and maybe Britain, but I know France was wanting to consume Liberia under colonization. Even though it's kind of like a proxy United States colony, you know, even though it's kind of like that, because the African Americans that did go to Liberia, because that was the land of the free, right? That was the land of the free for Africans in America. Even though that was what it was, they were still really working in the interests of America. But that position or that dynamic enabled him to exercise his power to stop Liberia from being consumed by France. So that was realized, okay, that was the first thing that opened our minds to him. And then when we learned about Dr. Tyree Wright and what she does, the great work that she done upon his life, and realized, this is just a whole fallacy, but there's layers and depths to him. So the accommodationist tag on him is because, yes, he did rub shoulders with the elites of the world. So he met Queen Victoria, for example. He was rubbing shoulders with the likes of Andrew Carnegie, one of the dynastic families as well. Was it Rockefellers, I think it was? JP Morgan, sorry, not Rockefeller. JP Morgan and Carnegie. And because of his relationships with them, he was able to get funds from them, and he put that towards the initiative of the Tuskegee Institute, which was basically a self-sufficient college that created everything, brick and mortar. So this is the thing, when people do think of it as like indentured servitude and indentured, so you just wanted us to be workers, it's like those skills should be seen alongside the academics.
Yeah,
so that was basically,
and that's what his thing was.
Academics,
loved books,
craft.
he loved books, but he also understood that you needed to get grafting. Is that ironically, he saw the dilapidation of the plantation he grew up on, and he saw the white folks were living poor. Like, you know, those times there, you started to see capitalism in its full glory. You know, where the extreme distance between the haves and the have-nots. So you could even have enslaved people and be poor. Imagine that. So he was like, you know, we need to be able to do all the things they can't do. Like, I'm here able at these young ages to do all these things, and these white folks they can't do it. So he was very much about do for self, very much about learning these skills about arable land and being able to plant a tree and know about what seeds to do this and how do you make brick and mortar, like you said, literal bricks.
The paper that they wrote on, the pencil that they used, the pencil like every aspect of what is needed came from the people of Tuskegee Institute. So that operated as a black print for a Marcus Garvey who was thinking, okay, we can do this worldwide. Then for Marcus Garvey, that inspires Kwame Nkrumah to think about, we can do this Africa-wide. So it's you know, Booker T is thinking in terms of like every element that needs to be created, we're gonna do it.
Yeah.
And that's the mentality he had. But he was also skilled enough or diplomatic enough or able to play politics enough to be able to negotiate with the people that have the resources.
Yeah.
And also exercise political power. Because power is a funny thing, right? And this is important to this is one of the things I learned from Booker T. Washington. Power isn't just brute force. Soft power is a phrase that is used a lot, but soft power is normally what controls the mind before it affects the physical. You can't have a military force without the mind the mind comes first. The mind, in fact, the mind is everything. Without the mind, you can't do nothing. So Booker T. Washington decided to focus on the mind and the FUBU, the for us, by us. The contention that people have with him is like, he was, you know what? Let them have their segregation. Let them have do whatever they like. Whatever they want to do, let them have it. Let's just focus on economics. That was his thing. Yeah. And the political side of it, the integration battle, I'm on the economic front. And then we can, that worked for the Europeans in America who didn't want to deal with the political fight with Africans. But for us, it worked in our favor, as it's panned out, because over 100 years later, equality still hasn't happened. And in a lot of ways,
we're reversed because we don't have those skills. A lot of us have been victim to having those skills taken away from us by following in the same direction as these countries, kind of making these swath rules about, we all kind of shop in these high streets and we all do this and we all do that. So no one's learning about farming, no one's learning about sustainability or anything like that, or do for self. So, and that's the same in America. So it's like, that way of living is what we've all adopted, and racism is still there. So it's so hindsight is a wonderful thing, and studying and learning about these people is also wonderful, because all his books are there. The Tuskegee Institute still has over 33 of his 33 books and publications of his writings that they only reduced to Up From Slavery, which is an amazing book also to read, which is his biography. But there's so much more
at the time as well.
So much more that he wrote that really demonstrates his Pan-African thought, which really demonstrates his love for his people in his writing. So a great study. Next.
Mentioned his name a few times, the Honourable Marcus Mosiah Garvey.
Hey. So man. So okay, where do we start? So we have mentioned him a few times, because let's do him and let's do Ida B. Wells at the same time. Can we try and manage that?
Okay, let's try.
The reason why we can do that crossover is they had a meal together, and Ida B. Wells Barnett, whose husband we could even look into as well as a deep character, because he owned the first newspaper of Chicago, black-owned newspaper, which he then took over. Ida B. Wells is a journalist. She's the last person we've just studied, and she was an investigative journalist, first of her kind. She was studying and advocating against the Jim Crow laws that was specifically the lynching, which was going on heavily at that time, because the excuse given that all these people that they were lynching were criminals of some sort. And what she discovered upon her friend Thomas being killed alongside these other two gentlemen who owned a groceries store, that they were just innocent men or women at times as well, or even children, who these mobs just decided they were going to kill, but were excusing it to say, they'd raped, they'd done something inappropriate, and all these lies. She recorded in her Red Line pamphlet over 720 cases. 720 cases, and she toured, she went global with it. She even came to these shores here, in specifically London, to talk against what was going on in America. She was demonstrating that this so-called great land, America, a land of the free, was not. She knew Frederick Douglass, who is related to Dr. Umar, Dr. Ian Johnson. And, she, at the time, before his death, he championed a lot of the works that she was doing, but she also, at this big fair that they had in the United States, kind of demonstrating to the world the great America, she was like, look, we've got so much great Black Americans doing so much, you know, amazing work. I'm seeing Black towns and amazing things we're building, and you're demonstrating us that these mammies and these narratives, it's just not good enough. I'm a writer, I'm a journalist, I'm a teacher. So Frederick Douglass wasn't even invited, even though he was very popular at the time, he was famous. You know, a lot of white people were respecting Frederick Douglass for the movements, the anti-slavery movements and works that he was doing. He was abolitionist. What's the word? Abolitionist. And she, you know, I've just realised we missed Harriet Tubman, but yeah.
Okay, it's all right.
Yeah.
We're gonna go back.
So, yeah, another powerhouse, tiny woman, but top Talawa, full of just passion and fight against injustice, you know, and even when she married late comparatively, because, you know, in those times, I guess you can say that a lot of women were meant to marry by your time you're 20 or something like that. She was head down working, but yeah, her and her husband. So her husband had seen or heard about Marcus Garvey, had seen him speaking somewhere, and invited him for dinner, and they had a dinner together. And I just find that so wonderful, like this crossover moment where these great people that we're then gonna go on and learn about 100+ years later had this meeting of minds, and she really, you know, adored Marcus Garvey and his ideas and his passions, and obviously would have played a part in influencing him somewhat because he was much younger than she was, and her husband as well. So yeah, it's a cute little story. I just wanted to add in there.
Yeah, and the other cuteness I guess I could add is that she's a fashionista. So there's that other element of these. So when we think of revolutionaries, we do think of them as very serious and very hard, but they are full human beings. And so she liked to dress up. She liked to wear the high fashion of the day. So she dressed to look good. Ida B. Wells did. And also to note, like, the reason why Booker T. Washington, Ida B. Wells, Marcus Garvey, and several others that from the Americas or the Caribbean that came to the UK was because...
sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Actually, let me take this moment. Big up to Reef Takuma. Big up to family Antigua and Barbuda. Rise up to everyone as well that's watching. Feel free to comment on anything that is being said as well. But yeah, what I was saying, the reason why they were coming to the UK and the reason why Ida B. Wells sought to shame the America to the world, in particular to a place like Britain, and when they come here, they didn't just come to one place, they toured, and they would have a big following. And it's because at that time, this country was even bigger than what we think of United States of America is today. And the reason why I say even bigger is because United Kingdom had 3/4 of the world. It was known as the empire where the sun never sets. So if you think of it in that fashion, how massive in people's minds United Kingdom was, this is why they came here, to if they could influence here, then maybe things in America could change. That was the dynamic of the time. Obviously, after the Second World War and when the independence of a lot of nations came through, things changed, things shifted. But that's why Ida B. Wells would come here. That's why Booker T. Washington would come here and see Queen Victoria and go on their tours. And this is why Marcus Garvey even came here and actually lived here. So yeah, so I think you've said quite a bit on Ida B. Wells. Do check her out. Fierce queen out there. And another intellect. They're all intellects, to be honest, all super intelligent and have the courage and the fortitude to keep going on no matter what. And that is literally no matter what. And with Marcus Mosiah Garvey, well, this channel, you know, just watch some of the videos that Shakara, big up Shakara, I'm not even going to go into much about Marcus Garvey because there is so much. This is a Garveyite channel.
Yeah.
So yeah, you've got so much content. Let's go through Kimbunga Media and talk about Garvey. But it was great studying Marcus Garvey, and this reminds me of what I wanted to say about Kandake Amanirenas. The thing about Kandake Amanirenas for me was the feeling of power. And it's a sort of feeling of power that we didn't experience, or I didn't experience with any of the others. And it's the power in real terms, power in all terms, power. What Stella was referring to in terms of the power to build pyramids. So in peace, she wasn't just a tyrant. She wasn't a warrior that because she was a warrior. So this is a warrior queen. So she's not like send the soldiers out or the warriors out into the battlefield and let them do their thing in her name. She was on the field, like on the field. You know what I'm saying? And she's from a lineage of Kandakes that on elephant back. That's what they were doing.
Yeah. And
when it came to, it was not a warrior that overspilled into tyranny and where her people are being brutalized or there's a form of authoritative dictatorship. No. In peacetime, she's building. And that feeling of power was just felt. Now, with Marcus Mosiah Garvey, when you're listening to his speeches, the very few that we have access to, but that power is in his voice. That power. So it's not. It's a next. There's passion, and a lot of people can have passion when speaking, but he had the power behind the passion, and that power came from his knowledge of self. So he knew of our great history. When he was mentioning, he would reference Africa in a high fashion because he knew of what we came from. He knew of the civilizations of before. So he could reference them. And he saw, because of that, he knew what we could become. And that's the power as to which he spoke with.
Yeah.
So it was a joy to write about him. But do you want to say anything else?
No, I think that's fine.
Okay.
We can move on to...
You said Harriet Tubman.
Harriet Tubman. I did want to mention that the Garvey village concept is birthed from Auntie Jean's African Culture Market, which I hope you will all be in attendance. Those of you who are away and in another land, you can join online. You can book an online ticket. Check out Auntie Jean's African Culture Market. This Sunday, the 20th of October, is the 10-year anniversary. And the Garvey Village concept is a building for us, by us. They already have created a branch which supports the elderly in Jamaica. It's a breakfast club for the elderly in Jamaica that already exists. And that was created during the lockdown. So a building here that supports the most needy and vulnerable, and also just the local community, offering a space that is a solution to the issues that we face as African people. We need space so that we can teach these skills to empower us to be economically empowered, to be free from the system and relying on the system that doesn't support us properly, and also to teach us the knowledge such as what we're learning here from the revolutionary minds, so that we can educate our people to think much higher of themselves than the world tries to project upon us. So the Garvey Village is a fundraising. A fundraiser is happening this Sunday, but it's happening in general to create this space which is owned for us and by us. And the black print came from Marcus Mosiah Garvey. And we have some special announcements, so I'm not going to announce them here because I don't know if I'm supposed to yet. So, but we'll move on. But it is endorsed properly. So yeah. Yeah.
Garvey's legacy lives on.
Yes.
But yeah, this is a Garveyite channel. So yeah, like I said, let's go through the amazing. Basically, the last thing I'll say about Marcus Mosiah Garvey is his achievements of his time hasn't been matched since.
No.
So what he's achieved, we in fact not even close. We've not achieved. So yeah, do check him out and be inspired. Next, Harriet Tubman.
Harriet Harriet Tubman was a magical being. She was magical because she actually suffered an injury, which meant that she had a form of narcolepsy, which is where you kind of fall asleep at any point given time that you don't know when it's going to happen. It's almost similar to kind of epileptic fits, but you don't. She didn't have the bodily interruptions as such. But it was a neuro challenge because she was using the Underground Railroad, which was built by. So you have a long group of people that are associated with the Underground Railroad, which was a line from. I don't know the exact location.
It was more of a system.
Yeah, but it was
of networks.
Networks that ran a specific route from one area that she was from to Canada. Was it to Canada?
Yes, they would take them to Canada.
Because in Canada, slavery was actually abolished.
Or northern states of America.
Yeah.
By her time, I think the northern states were not.
Yes, sorry,
Yeah,
the northern states.
Canada.
It was the northern states at first, and then I think they brought back laws to kind of make it even more difficult for people to walk around there anymore. So they had to go to Canada.
Yeah.
Instead, because they brought in more laws because too many of the enslaved peoples were escaping. So yes, she was part of that, and she was just this, tiny woman. And she, her father, when she was younger, had taught her so much about the stars. So she understood how to read where the North Star is, so she could follow direction and navigate the routes. She's the first woman to actually support in a war situation as well. So she helped save a lot of people as a consequence of being part of an army. The army invited her to help them in terms of escaping. So, I mean, it's just, her story is really incredulous. It's like, how did this woman do all of these things?
Yeah, so I think by that time she joins the army, or she has that position, slavery is over. So, but during what she's most well known for, as most people have heard of Harriet Tubman, is she was freeing the enslaved.
Yeah.
And so, in a nutshell, she was born into slavery. Her family was enslaved. She freed herself. She ran away, and she wanted to go with her family, but they weren't ready yet for various different reasons. They weren't ready mentally and for whatever reason. So instead, what happened was she didn't just free herself. She came back, and this is where the Underground Railroad really comes. She joins a part of it, but she herself is going back and freeing her family members, freeing her community members, freeing her people, and to the degree whereby she was known as the Black Moses. And she was another formidable one. The gun. And so she carried a gun, and her mentality was, or run, like we're going, or
because you'd get people just so scared and so used to being enslaved, they just wouldn't come. They wouldn't, they'd be questioning, and they'd be questioning in the wrong time. It's like, you better get your, so and she does famously have the quote of, "I would have saved a whole lot more.
1,000 more. I saved 1,000.
They were slaves.
And I could have saved 1,000, and I could have freed 1,000 more if they knew." But under her charge, not a single soul lost their lives.
Yeah. So don't watch the movie, because it is a good movie, but she could also sing. That was the element of that, why they chose to do it the way they did the movie with Cynthia Erivo's, because there would be these songs as well, which were kind of codes to let people know that what to do, what the next action was to take, which is just so powerful to think about. And
in terms of that, knowing what next to do, her narcolepsy actually gave her visions.
Yeah, and that's
so when she'd have visions
and say, "No, don't go that way." And that's like definitely the source. It's a conversation with the God, the maker of all things. It's definitely portals that she was going through.
And the injury was happened because she was struck on the head. That's actually how it happened as a child. But as a child also, she was recognised for her amazing strength. So she was very, very,
like
very strong. Physical.
Yeah,
she was very, very physically strong.
That was because
to the
work.
degree whereby it was notable.
Yeah.
Like they saw it, how strong she was. So she, her story is an amazing story, and she's one of the few that actually lived into her 90s. And she's recognised. Today, she's one of the most famous freedom fighters. Period.
So check that story out.
But yeah, like with everybody else, even the famous ones, even with Martin Luther King, you have to dig deeper into their story.
Deep. Don't see just the surface.
Yeah.
People keep writing about them because so much has been obscured from their truth. So, just keep going with it, and
like for example,
we're gonna definitely one day have a resource, I think, because our level of study does go that deep
from our angle.
Yeah, we like to make sure that these things are like, if it seems a bit like the typical way that they describe these people as like, oh, they were dictators and they were this and that, they were like, let's go a bit deeper with this conversation.
And with Harriet Tubman, the last thing to say about her, she was aware of her African self. So despite being enslaved, her parents taught her that she was Ashanti. Yeah, and that's key. It's key. It's a key thing to know, because a lot of the rebels knew their African self. You're going to fight more if you know where you come from. You're going to fight more if you know that being enslaved is not who you are. Yeah. So, who next?
So next, so who did we do? Kimbunga. So we studied Kimbunga, and from one magical being to another magical prophetess. She was from the Kingdom of Congo, the area that covered, it had a little bit of Gabon, had part of the today's Democratic Republic of Congo, and the area that is Angola as well. Is there one more place?
There's one more.
Oh, where is that? Benin? No. I can't think. So yeah, that was the Kingdom of Congo, and it was penetrated by the Portuguese in the 1400s, sadly. And no, before that, before the 1400s.
No, the 1400s is accurate.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the Portuguese has had for before then.
So in that whole time, yes, that's right. So, and then you have 200 years of that before Kimbunga comes. So she's
it's just the Republic of Congo, that's it. So
yeah.
The DRC, Republic of Congo, because of Congo, Brazzaville,
okay,
Gabon, and Angola.
And she, hey, we got so many people around the world. Got ATL in the building, got Antigua. Welcome, family. So good to see you all here. And let us know any information that you know about some of these people that we're talking about. Just to update you, we are from Out of Noise. I'm Stella B. This is Medai. And we are the power couple that hosts Auntie Jean's African Culture Market every third Sunday of the month. And part of what and we represent Out of Noise. And part of what we do there is the Revolutionary Minds, where we study a powerful Pan-African great for the month, and then write poetry and perform it in the Auntie Jean's African Culture Market. So here on Kimbunga and Kimbunga Media, we talk about some of what we've learned. And this month, we're just going over everybody because it's a special month. It's 10 years since Auntie Jean's was birthed. And so we're celebrating the 10-year anniversary. And with that, we're going to, each poet that's involved, the Garvey Village poets, or whoever wants to write, is going to write poetry about their favorite revolutionary man that we studied so far. So we're just running through each of them.
And if you're inspired, you can write too.
Yes, do write a poem, do share it, do just do your studies for yourself and share the information. And poetry is such a powerful and penetrative way of getting through to people's hearts the message of the person you're studying about. So poetry is just such a huge communicator. So do try and make what you learn into poetry and share it. So yeah, that's just to update you where we're at. We've just gone through everybody, and now we're gonna our main person we're looking at is Thomas Sankara. So we will go to him very shortly. We just want to quickly finish who else we've studied. So Kimbunga, I just mentioned as well. So do you remember much about Kimbunga?
So yes, Kimbunga, she comes in a time, you were saying 1400s is when the Portuguese come into the motherland, and the Kingdom of Congo is where they really just sink their teeth into and start to infiltrate and then gain power and control over. It's a very interesting story because Kimbunga comes, she's born, she's alive 2 centuries in. So if I'm correct in saying, I think her time might even be after.
It's after Queen Nzinga, yeah.
Queen Nzinga.
Yeah, she comes. Yeah. She comes a few years after Queen Nzinga. I think 7 years after Queen Nzinga. So yeah, a few years after Queen Nzinga.
So a few years after Queen Nzinga, and so Kingdom of Congo, 2 centuries before Kimbunga. To give you the context of where things are at, the King Alfonso. What is this? He's got a African name, which I've forgotten. It says it all, really. He actually gives up his African traditional ways in brotherhood of Catholicism, Christianity, believing that there is a oneness between Africans and Europeans. The Portuguese, and as well as the Europeans, didn't see things in that way. And they went on to enslave his people. And even though he was saying, this is not, I thought we were brothers in arms, please stop and save my people, they did not stop. And there was a level of control and power they had over the royalty in the Kingdom of Congo that enabled them to continue expanding their slave trade. Kimbunga, 2 centuries deep. So that's the context that you have. So 2 centuries deep of basically Portuguese colonialism, essentially. It's not officially that, but it is that. She is born into that with another fire, energy of spirit, young, fiery energy, and a rebel in many different ways. And basically, at a very young age, she is identified as a prophetess. She comes up with her own version of Christianity, which centers Africans in the story.
Well, after dying,
right? So
coming back to life,
right? So
get that part.
Right, okay, so her story is the Jesus story, really.
Yeah.
She was creating miracles, and then she died, came back to life after 3 days with these visions, and the vision was that Jesus is black. Jesus is African, Jesus is Congolese, essentially. If Jesus and the disciples are you, that's basically what her message was. And naturally, the Portuguese hated that message and sought to end her movement. So she was very influential. When she was on her moves, she was gathering groups of people to actually have, just wakening them up, awakening them out of the sleep. The witchcraft that had been performed upon them, and the rituals, because the before her time there was another king that was who was defeating the Portuguese, unfortunately stabbed in the back, another form of treachery, and then the Portuguese then did what the Belgians later on did to Lumumba, and what later on happened to Sankara. They had his head and they put it up in the church. A church. Anyway, Kimbunga, then she basically inspires a lot of people to rise up against that. The Portuguese hate her, they capture her, and I believe something that we did learn that was her husband as well, but that is a bit shrouded in mystery. Regardless, her and her son was captured and then crucified, essentially, and burnt. Yeah, burnt at stake.
Burnt. So,
and what, she was 22 years old?
Yeah.
At 22 years old, so she was really, really young. But yeah, her influence was, again, another evidence that spirit can never die, because she then influenced the Stoner Rebellion across the oceans in America.
And many other rebellions. So any rebellion that came from sort of Congolese lineage people, they say kind of was attached to that knowledge of self and the stories of her. She was said to have performed miracles, and they say that the trees would bend to greet her as she walked through. So very powerful history there to learn about. There's many books written about her, mostly in Portuguese. But yeah, beautiful, powerful, and enriching story. I wouldn't even say a sad ending. I'd more say it's just these things immortalize these people. So it just acts in the opposite way that they want it to. They want to burn her story and cause fear and end her, but that actually keeps the story going, ironically. Those sort of very treacherous and awful deaths seem to really just keep these, they make them martyrs, essentially. You know, martyrdom is a real thing. It really does work in the opposite way that the powers that be want it to be.
The other one we next?
Yeah.
Okay, Haile Selassie.
Yes, His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie was one of our controversial studies.
The most controversial.
But a powerful human being nonetheless, very hugely influential, and the reason behind the Rastafari movement, which is named after Rastafari. So Haile Selassie was the first. He was the emperor of the region that was then, at the time he came into power, called Ethiopia. And before that, it was known as Abyssinia. And so that area there, even going into Sudan, Somalia, all of that area there, is interesting to learn histories about individuals, because you kind of get an idea of the landscape of those areas of Africa as well, and see our connection towards, because we might learn about West African people to do with Pan-Africanism, but we're all connected. And, you know, we've gone South Africa, West, middle kind of, in terms of Congo, but
that's coming out of the middle.
Yeah, but this
Central Africa.
Central Africa, we've gone, you know, north.
What, Sudan? Who's north? Kandake Amanirenas?
No, who's north?
No one. North Africa is Arab now, anyway. Who are you referring to?
So there's not really a study there yet. We need to look into North Africa.
Well, the revolutionary minds, if we're talking about Kemet, then I guess we could go into Hannibal, I suppose.
Yeah,
but
we need to do a bit of
the revolutionary minds of North Africa wouldn't really apply, because those are more when we're around Kemet. That's our golden period. So I guess if we're talking about rebellions and revolutionaries, and in fact revolutioning against what was to come, the powers a lot later, and by the last 1,000 years, it's been pretty much Arab run.
But yeah, so yeah, okay, true, good point. Yeah, so we haven't really done North, but yeah, and there probably won't be a reason to go there, but we'll see.
But yeah, Haile Selassie, controversial, because in the land of Ethiopia, you have the Tuareg and the Amharic that have their contentions, and also Marcus Garvey had his contentions as well. But he maintained the integrity of Ethiopia in the face of the force of Italy, who were desperate to colonize and they failed. And it was under his leadership that they failed. So another very interesting leader that, like one of them, you've got to do your research and just learn about the multifaceted natures of these leaders.
Yeah.
And yeah, like as well, so there's ways and means as to which we can judge, but you have to consider the context and the conditions as to which and what the tools that certain leaders and the pressures that they are under to make certain decisions. It's not so straightforward from a position of looking in. You know what I'm saying? Even though we are people that are affected by a lot, I find even today we'll put certain criticisms on people who we perceive has a certain level of power, as if we would do anything different, but we're not the ones having to make certain decisions. So, yeah. You want to say anything else?
No.
All right. So, who next? Kwame Nkrumah. Kwame Nkrumah. The reason why Kwame Nkrumah, he was one that we were supposed to do. These are the early days. So in the very beginning of Revolutionary Minds, the event at Auntie G's African Culture Market, it was literally just Nate the lyricist and us two. So even though us two are poets, we didn't really, it would be very sporadic when we would perform at Auntie G's. But Nate actually pushed us to perform every month. And in those beginning days, we had Kwame Nkrumah. I think Kwame Nkrumah may have come after Patrice Lumumba, actually. I think that was the one that came after.
Yeah.
But Nate wasn't able to come to Auntie G, and so we never actually got to honour Kwame Nkrumah. But we so in this special month, myself and Nate have, done a little research into him. Nate, I wish you were here right now because you could go into Kwame Nkrumah. We've got to honour him properly, because this is one of our greats. And we haven't actually done that for him. So I don't know how we're going to work it out because, every month we're doing somebody new. But we're going to have to figure a way of really honouring him because he deserves it. He actually deserves it. He is the first leader of independence, of independent Africa. Independent Black Africa begins with Kwame Nkrumah. Kwame Nkrumah took on the name Ghana. So, when it comes to people's perception of African nations, we kind of almost think that these nations that we know of today have always been around. They haven't. They're very new in their conception. And Ghana is a name that Kwame Nkrumah took from the Empire of Ouagadougou, and the kings of Ouagadougou, their name was Ghana. So he renamed the Gold Coast Ghana to give an empowering name to his people. So they would walk around with the name King. And essentially his mindset wasn't just limited to the liberation of Ghanaians or the independence of Ghanaians. He was on it with the United States of Africa. His thinking was beyond the geographical location of Ghana itself. So he funded and he intellectually shared his insights with several different African leaders, including Patrice Lumumba. Patrice Lumumba is inspired by Kwame Nkrumah, and Democratic Congo is funded by Ghana, as well as several others. Kwame Nkrumah wrote several books as well, and he wrote
Africa Must Unite.
Africa Must Unite, and he wrote of the conditions of neo-colonialism. This is very early on upon independence, not every nation is even independent. He is seeing the dynamics and the control, the neo-colonial control of the former colonial powers, and he's highlighting them. And he knows of their involvement. He knows of the CIA, the secret intelligence agencies of other nations as well, in the removal of himself. So when he left the nation of Ghana, I think he was linking home in Chin, and that's when his exile took place, or forced exile. That's when the forced takeover happened, and basically Secretary of Guinea made him co-leader of Guinea, and yeah, the realization of the United States of Africa wasn't able to be realized, but nevertheless, the passion within him is a lineage that has been passed on. So that's Kwame Nkrumah. Hopefully, we get a chance to dive in deeper on him at another stage. Next is
another charming human being.
Yeah.
Who had a lot of gained a lot of sort of leeway when it comes to all these kind of different circles of power, but they backstabbed him in the end, as they did do with a lot of them. Who else? I think that's everybody.
Well, actually, no. Okay, so basically, we decided that we wanted to focus on one in the UK, because UK is a place that is often overlooked. So considered the godfather of Pan-Africanism in this country, Frank Critchlow is one that we did study. Frank Critchlow had a restaurant in Notting Hill called The Mangrove. That restaurant was an international global hub that attracted icons of the world like Muhammad Ali, Diana Ross, Nina Simone, Jimi Hendrix, Marvin Gaye, Bob Marley, and more. Basically, there's names I'm forgetting, but yeah, it was a hub, and he was very much persecuted continuously by the police. It also attracted what was to be known as the Mangrove Nine. A few of them, which are who were activists and were working to improve the conditions and situations of us Black British or Africans in England here. And so they held meetings in the Mangrove, as did Claudia Jones, the founder of Notting Hill, and the Notting Hill Carnival Committee would have their meetings in the Mangrove. So the Mangrove was really not just a restaurant; it was a really hot spot for a lot of activity in the Black community of its time. So we studied Frank Critchlow, and we studied the Mangrove Nine because the Mangrove Nine were the first, I believe, to defeat the police because they were brought to trial on riot acts and I believe incitement to something. Forgive the vagueness because I'm not. It was a few months ago, but nevertheless they went to court and they won on the major charges.
Free man of the law.
Utilizing a couple of them utilized the free man of the law, and a few of them represented themselves. A few of them did have lawyers that represented them, but a few of them represented themselves.
No, just two of them.
Two of them
represented themselves.
Okay, just two of them represented themselves. Everybody else did have lawyers, but they, one of the more well-known names would be Darcus Howe, and yeah, we had the pleasure of if you go back on one of the Kimbunga media episodes with the Revolutionary Minds, to have us having a conversation with the children of the next generation of the mangrove. We had Yinka and we had Jamila that joined us for a session. So do check that out to get their direct insights from what their parents went through. And yeah, I think that completes everybody, I think. Let me just make sure, because these are our great ancestors, these are great revolutionary minds that we covered. So we've got to make sure that we're not missing anybody out. We've covered, so a quick recap, we've done Ida B. Wells, we haven't really done Thomas Kwame Nkrumah, but you know, honor him anyway. Marcus Garvey, Kim Pavita, Winnie Mandela. I'm so glad I went through this. Dessalines, Steve Biko, Booker T, Harriet Tubman. I've just mentioned Frank Critchlow, Kandake Amanirenas. Yeah, the one, she's not an ancestor, but we did cover her nevertheless. Assata Shakur. Assata Shakur.
Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, Assata Shakur was a powerful leader. She's a cancer like me. She escaped from prison. So what she's famously advocating for now is prison reform, alongside Angela Davies, who does prison reform as well, who also spent a short time in jail in America. They were both at a point members of the Black Panther Party. The Black Panthers were formulated in 1966, was it?
Yes.
1966 by Fred Hampton. Actually, was it 66?
Yeah.
The 16th.
15th.
The 15th.
October.
The 15th of October 1966. They formulated the Black Panther Party to fight against the oppressing forces that were, you know, pumping drugs and poverty into our communities, our Black communities. So, and beating us up. The police were beaten, doing their brutality, becoming the new versions of the lynchers. So it was armed defense, and the law was on their side with that. So these young students knew their rights. These young students, these Black Panthers, knew they could defend themselves with guns. And so they taught that to other members of their community. And you have loads of young, spirited warriors, including Assata Shakur, who joined the Black Panther movement. She didn't end up staying with the Black Panther movement. She was then a part of another movement before being arrested for a crime that she did not commit. She was actually shot during a shootout with the police. A police officer lost his life, as did another member of the group that she was affiliated with, whose name I can't think of right now.
African Liberation Group.
They were in the car, there was a shootout, she was shot, she was struggling on the floor, and they still managed to make sure that she was the one that got accused of killing the police officer. And so they put her in a men's jail. They put her in prison, they locked her up, and she got to see
Black Liberation Army.
The Black Liberation Army. So she got to see firsthand the brutality of the prison system, the stink of it, the hell of it, the nightmare of it. And she was already someone who had done volunteer work within prisons already. She's very passionate about justice. And so finding herself in prison at such a young age must have seemed perfectly ironic to her, you know, in the sense of just how much she had volunteered her time and efforts into supporting prisoners and helping out in that way, and having that kind of eye to do that, and that want and that passion and that soul to do that, and ended up being one of the people that needed rescuing. She came from a long line of freedom fighters, and women in her family also were fighters. So she has that connection. She was a Pan-Africanist as well. She was very much aware of her African heritage, which is why she renamed herself Assata, and Assata Shakur, and she felt that was missing from the Black Panther Party. That's why she, alongside some other problems of misogyny, she felt she didn't really fit with their model, so she moved to the Black Liberation Army, which is where the incident occurred, where she ended up being taken to jail. And she's still alive today. She turned 80 this year in June. And so, yeah, she was a powerful one to study. She's got books out on her you should read. She's got some interviews that you can see her story. She escaped to Cuba, and recently when that blonde guy got elected president, he put another $1 million on her head for her arrest. But you know, Cuba has got her safely looked after, and always will do, so she will remain free.
The most wanted list, the top 10 most wanted list, the FBI's top 10 most wanted list, the first woman to be on the top 10 most wanted list.
So she was amazing to study as well, and some powerful, all these people, all these humans have created powerful poetry that you simply must access at some stage. So we, as the representative, as the Garvey village poets, we need to find a way of communicating these poems to you, maybe through a film, whatever it's going to be, like with a book, some recorded audio of them. We've got to do it. We've got to. So the poetry is strong. It's strong. It's potent. So we need to make sure that you guys get to access it as well. You family, not you guys, you family, our family need to access it. So Thomas Sankara, I'm going to read a couple facts about him. His name was Thomas Isadore Noel Sankara. He was born the 21st of December, which makes him a, does that make him a...
It makes him a Sagittarius.
Sagittarius. Makes sense.
I think.
And yeah, so he died on the 15th of October 1987, and he was a Burkinabe military captain. They call him a Marxist revolutionary, Pan-Africanist theorist, and the president of Burkina Faso from 1983 to 1987. Viewed by his supporters as a charismatic and iconic figure of revolution, he is commonly referred to as Africa's Che Guevara. I've heard that a few times. He helped vaccinate 2.5 million children against meningitis, yellow fever, and measles in a matter of weeks. He initiated a nationwide literacy campaign, increasing the rate from 13% in 1983 to 73% in 1987 before they killed him. He planted over 10 million trees to prevent desertification. He built roads and a railway to tie the nation together without foreign aid. He appointed women to high governmental positions and encouraged them to work, recruited into the ministry, and granted pregnancy leave during education. He outlawed female genital mutilation, and he outlawed forced marriages and polygamy in support of women's rights. He sold off the government fleet of Mercedes cars and made the Renault 5 the cheapest car sold in Burkina Faso at the time, the official service car for the ministers. And these greedy MFs couldn't bear that. Anyway, he reduced the salaries of all public servants, including his own, and forbade the use of government chauffeurs and first-class airline tickets. He redistributed land from the feudal landlords and gave it directly to the peasants. I don't know that word, but yeah, he gave it directly to the people. Wheat production rose in 3 years from 1,700 kilograms per hectare to 3,800 kilograms per hectare, making the country food self-sufficient. He opposed foreign aid, saying that he who feeds you controls you. And he spoke in forums like the Organization of the African Unity against continued neo-colonialist penetration of Africa through Western trade and finance. He called for the United Front of African Nations to repudiate their foreign debt. What does repudiate mean? Repudiate. Give back?
Or reject. Let me just get up the actual definition.
He argued that the poor and exploited did not have an obligation to repay money to the rich and exploiting. And in Ouagadougou, Sankara converted the army's provisioning store into a state-owned supermarket open to everyone, the first supermarket in the country. Do you want to read some?
Oh, no, you got this.
Okay. He forced civil servants to pay 1 month's salary to public projects. Wow. He refused to use the air conditioning in his office on the grounds that such luxury was not available to everyone, but a handful of Burkinabés. As president, he lowered his salary to $450 a month and limited his possessions to a car, 4 bikes, 3 guitars, a fridge, and a broken freezer. A motorcyclist himself, he formed an all-women motorcycle personal guard. Wow. He required public servants to wear traditional tunic woven from Burkinabé cotton and sewn by Burkinabé craftsmen. The reason being to rely upon local industry and identity rather than a foreign industry and identity. When asked why he didn't want his portrait hung in public areas, as was the norm for other African leaders, he replied, "There are 7 million Thomas Sankaras." An accomplished guitarist, he wrote the new national anthem himself, and he was really good friends with Fela Kuti actually as well. That's not mentioned here. But he seized power in 1983, popularly supported coup at the age of 33, with the goal of eliminating corruption and the dominance of the former French colonial power. He immediately launched one of the most ambitious programs for social and economic change ever attempted on African continent. To symbolize this new autonomy and rebirth, he renamed the country from Upper Volta to Burkina Faso, land of the upright man. His foreign policies were centered on anti-imperialism, with his government eschewing all foreign aid, pushing for odious debt reduction, nationalizing all land and mineral wealth, and averting the power and influence of the International Monetary Fund, and World Bank. His domestic policies were focused on preventing famine with agrarian self-sufficiency and land reform, prioritizing education with a nationwide literacy campaign and promoting public health by vaccinating 2.5 million children against meningitis, yellow fever, and measles. Other components of his national agenda, including planting over 10 million trees to halt the growing desertification of the Sahel, doubling wheat production by redistributing land from feudal landlords to peasants, suspending rural poll taxes and domestic rents, and establishing an ambitious road and rail construction program to tie the nation together. On the localized level, Sankara also called on every village to build a medical dispensary and had over 350 communities construct schools with their own labor. Moreover, his commitment to women's rights led him to outlaw female genital mutilation, forced marriages, and polygamy, while appointing women to high governmental positions and encouraging them to work outside the home and stay in school even if pregnant. So he really did so much. It goes on. He was really a transformational leader, and in the end they killed him. They stabbed him in the back. He had a friend that he met in Morocco. He did some works before he became the leader of Burkina Faso. He joined the military, which was the popular thing to do at his time. And he was sent to Madagascar, and I think he met Blaise there, who was originally appointed in Morocco, I think. But they became friends. And he was one of the people that ended up backstabbing him, because a lot of what he implemented that we just read, which changed and transformed the country, went against the conservatism, which was the sort of leading ideology of the time of most of the people who were in powerful positions. Those people were in support of the former colonial masters' ways. So they liked the ideas of being more important. They couldn't really sit with that kind of reduction of their assets, things that they could own for being like in those positions. Whereas he's looking at, okay, but we need to strip all of this back so that we can put that back in the land, in the people, in the growth of the country as a whole. They're looking like, oh, but I want my car, I want my shiny new thing, I want everyone to know me as, the I don't know, the important spokesman, the important person doing this and that. So those thinking, the way he thought was exceptional, the way all of these individuals thought was exceptional, was different. Unfortunately, the norm is for people to be greedy and not really think of their fellow people like that, especially not women. Like, he was very rare for that. I know what I also read about him is the day that he dedicated to them. So we have International Women's Day, which is celebrated in different parts of the world. Burkina Faso is one of the places, and he would say to the men that you have to do the work of the woman for this day. You have to recognize all of the efforts and things that they do as women. And he had a very strong influence from his mum. He was one of 10 children. He was the third born of 10 children. So his mother played a huge role in influencing how he felt about women. Really respected her. She really promoted that education and knowledge within all of the children. And so he really had an adoration for her. And I think that's helped promote this idea of when he became someone in a position of power, he wanted women to be respected as he grew up respecting his mother. And her principles that were put into him. His father was a military background as well, so obviously you see the influence there. Fought in the Second World War, and that put them in a position of privilege. So that's where he also recognized the differences. He could see the differences, but with most people, they'd be different and think, oh, I'm better than you, whatever, I'm in this position. But he was more like, I need to recognize my privileges and see you as my comrade. And that attitude is something very, very special and unique in a freedom fighter. It's something that produces a freedom fighter, someone who's passionate about everyone. So Thomas Sankara, Nat's one of Nat's favorite people, as well as, I say, Patrice Lumumba, obviously Amanirenas, but that achievement is notable. It's something, it's recordable, and it's you've got as you mentioned earlier, I think in this chat, or we were chatting, and it's the same as Kwame Nkrumah's achievements in terms of the the things that were built, the industries that were invested in. Unfortunately, there were some loans taken because I guess the sheer size of what he wanted to do, it was a bigger lot of people to try and manage in Ghana than in Burkina Faso. Just different reasons why it would have been harder to try and get the resources to make it happen as quickly. But he was doing similar, like making factories that could produce here inland, that we don't need to import this or that. We're doing this. Our leather is going to come. The leather that makes the shoes is going to come from the cows that live here, that come from here. No, none is important and stuff like that. It's self-sufficiency. And yeah, Thomas Sankara really did achieve so much in 4 years. So it's just a shame. But yeah, I would like to share some poetry. Would you like to share your poem? I think you should go first. How's your poem?
That's fine. What I wanted to say about Thomas Sankara real quick was basically when it comes to Black history, right now in the UK, where it's Black History Month, and the focus is on Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, American civil rights, pretty much. Don't really, and I guess over the years there's been more attention on the Windrush generation, so there'll be chat on that. When it comes to likes of Thomas Sankara, because we're English speaking, so if we're from the Caribbean or the continental African, is generally speaking going to be the Anglophone ones. At the former colonies of the United Kingdom. When it comes to the French-speaking ones, the Francophone, we have less of an attachment to them. But there's great efforts, as you can see on Kimbunga media, to bridge that gap. So Kemi Seba, for example, will be covered on the Kimbunga media because we're all one, and we shouldn't be separated by language. That's the whole divide and conquer issue that we have. And so when we're learning about leaders, it's very important, especially if you're from West Africa, to know about your bordering colonially constructed nations. You should know about them. And we find that some nations are literally side by side and don't know what's going on like next door. And it's not even next door, in the same house really, because these borders weren't even created by us and don't have a clue. You can call it the next room. Next room don't know what's going on in the next room. It's mad. But Thomas Sankara, he is definitely one of my favorites, and the reason is all the things that Stella listed. But he also proved this notion that change has to be long and slow. He put a nonsense to that because he was able to achieve everything. It managed to achieve self-sufficiency in 4 years without foreign aid. And that's through the decision making that he had. And also it's important to note, similar with Kwame Nkrumah renamed the Gold Coast to Ghana, the empire, from the empire of Wagadu. This is the golden period of our history. And previously, before Thomas Sankara, an independent Upper Volta is, so upon independence from the French, it still holds the name Upper Volta. Thomas Sankara is like, no, that's not who we are. That's not representing, nothing to do with us. Let's call ourselves the land, the people from the upright people, the people from the land of the upright people. And that is what Burkina Faso means. And with identity, with such a label attached to an identity of a people, you're going to walk and carry yourself as such. And he walked and embodied that, being upright. And when the quote said about the 7 million Thomas Sankaras, that means 7 million upright people. And that is the people that he wanted of the whole entire continent. So he was another one who thought, as we said earlier, who thought Africa. It wasn't just Burkina Faso, and this makes you a huge threat.
Yeah.
So
how big? Yeah. So yeah, I believe his wife is still with us today, but yeah, I think what I would encourage everyone, and what I'm going to do definitely, is give Kwame Nkrumah and Thomas Sankara the time, dedication to really go in.
So to note, basically they were ones that we did do previously, but there was just the three of us at the beginning. That's why.
Yeah.
So we weren't on Kimbunga Media when we were doing Thomas Sankara or.
Yeah, I think it's just worth just giving them that space and time. Like even today, it's been really good to give him that space. So I think we need to do that with Kwame Nkrumah as well. And yeah, sometimes we might have to repeat, but it's been good to go over everyone. And thank you for staying with us. We're gonna do a little bit of poetry. You want to go first?
You haven't got yours ready?
I can get mine ready. Yeah, mine is ready.
Okay, well, you're getting yours ready. Well, we're both in a position where we have to get ready. So, like, yeah.
It's right here. No, it's fine. It's right here. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So, on the day that marked his murder, which was the 15th of October, so this is an image I put up on purpose, but I want to kind of really show it because I think one of the key charms about him was it's like a revolutionary 2-pack. It's very, very, very like attractive. So yeah, this is an image of Thomas Sankara in my style of art. And yeah, they killed him on the 15th of October. '87, 4 years in of him being empowered. But yeah, I'm gonna go through this. So, killed 37 years ago, October 15th, 1987. Though his body was cut down, he journeyed right up to heaven. Blaise Compaoré had kind eyes, the kind of eyes that could catch you by a deadly surprise. As his hand held his best friend's death's bringing knife, his blazing soul invisible to the naked eye. If only Sankara could have been wise to the lies of a man whose spirit was compromised, corrupted by ruthless fear and greed. It should have been him that had died, not the man who was fulfilling our Pan-African dreams, not the man who was talking about self-sufficiency, setting Africa free, creating opportunities, a widening target upon his back, the brave heart surrounded by cowardly nations whose fortitude lacked. Thomas Isidore Noah Sankara had really kind eyes. Those kind of eyes were earnest and sincere, and we find them again today in Ibrahim Traoré. That's my Will Bill approach me now.
Give thanks. Yeah, we get a gist of what Wagwan, Blaise Compaoré, he took over from Thomas Sankara, and he was in power for, I believe it was 27 years. I think it was 27 years. Then he was removed. People overthrew him. The people power overthrew him. But he dictated for a long time, reversed everything, and the country went backwards. So from impoverished to self-sufficiency, back to impoverished. That's what Blaise Compaoré's legacy is, through treachery, selfish treachery. And yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Ibrahim Traoré at the end, and you end there, because it's important to know. I find it interesting, yeah, because we've been kind of, like social media has the bubbles things, and so we're all placed in our different bubbles. But I'm thinking now, our attitudes towards certain things today, was that similar back in the 80s? So how many of us in the diaspora, or even on the continent, were aware of what Thomas Sankara was doing, and how many of us was championing what Thomas Sankara is doing?
Well,
it's a question.
It's a great question. I was 6 months old when he went into power in 1983, in January 1983. I was 6 months old, or nearly 7 months. And I was thinking about my parents, hearing about what he's up to in Burkina Faso, Upper Volta at that time, and what were their opinions and thoughts like that. It's a good question, and I want to ask my dad particularly, because he would have been maybe quite in tune with it. But yeah.
Yeah, I want, like, because they don't talk. I didn't grow up knowing about Thomas Sankara.
No. So
I'm just wondering, in that time, we're in tune, and I do think what's happening right now with Ibrahim Traore and Asima Goita and the name slips of mind, or the pronunciation of it, the leader of the junta of Niger. They don't have that attention that they deserve. So I remember when Ibrahim Traore, and in fact when Niger rose up against France, last year was it? And a lot of our attention was on what was going on in Atlanta with the brothers standing up for themselves against the white, the European Americans attacking the one brother. They're ganging up on them, and the brothers came and swam across, that, and it became a meme, and they went to defend, and they beaten them up. That was like a big up moment for us, but that happens. But what we don't have see is a nation reject the colonial forces, kick them out, boot them out. And each of these countries have joined together, united, and they've kicked out the French, and they've kicked out the American forces as well. And we in diaspora are not really giving it the attention that it deserves. And of course, it's because they're French speaking. So we're allowing colonial languages to divide us. I just find it interesting. Is there a mirror in here? So I'm glad that your poem ended with shouting out Ibrahim Traore, because we've got to show more. I feel like even with us in the Pan-African realm, we do have to focus more attention in that direction. All right, so I'll share my verse. Thank you for tuning in up until now. We're 2.5 hours in, but we're pretty much reaching the closing section. I want to big up to the scattered minds. Big up to you. Big up to Tarif Takuma. Big up to Netta Unk, and big up to Javier Melaman. Yes, more Pan-Africanism. Pan-Africanism is the solution to the problems that we face with ourselves. Our potential, the stuff of sci-fi, but we're blinded by. Clouds, wizards sown, to cloak the continent they call dark, so their moves remain unseen, while we're poisoned by the potions they gave us. In deep sleep, existing in nightmares, lost lions thinking they're sheep, reliant and meek, but some awoken. The spark in the spirit, determined to make a difference, made them the Black Messiah, sent by the ancestors, so knew what we were before the embers of what Europeans first encountered at our peak. We were much more stuff of law. Nkrumah knew his black print, Gold Coast to Ghana, for he wanted our people to walk with the titles of kings of Ouagadougou, the capital fitting for Burkina Faso, land of the upright people, where it's normal to be noble, the standing of those worthy to walk the motherland that powers the world to move, takes great responsibility. Who to lead such a nation? What's your first thoughts when you hear African leaders?
Corruption!
Maybe that's because scores of the real ones were assassinated. Let's go in on the greatest, one of the greatest, Thomas Sankara, the Pan-African vision manifested in a man, understood without women by our side will never experience true emancipation. No jobs beyond them. Sankara ensured government positions, women were appointed. Change was immediate, leading by example, giving up on the elite fleet of government cars, more time cycling while breaking cycles of the colonizer with food boo policies, saw those providing aid the reason for the wound, wanted to keep us in need when we can heal, feed, shelter, build ourselves. Education and healthcare were human rights. Every Burkinabe must have, so both were free, and that the farmers are the feeders of the people. So he nationalized land, gave them greater control, so poverty was reduced and the people were fed. This was the standard of how he led. Progress, they say, is slow. Sankara proved otherwise. Miracles were made, from impoverished to self-sufficient in just 4 years. Impoverished to self-sufficient in just 4 years. Unfortunately, his story ended there. Treachery by gunfire. For colonial masters, they reversed every achievement and made Burkina Faso poor again. Only for so long. The immortal spirit still in old and young. The emergence of Ibrahim Traoré, the second coming of Sankara to restore order once again, along with Mali, Niger, and we are here to break the curse and cycle in a new golden age.
That's amazing.
I think. But yeah, so that sums it up.
Yeah, that sums it up. That sums it up lovelyly. We will see you again next month. I actually know who we're doing, but I'm not at liberty to say to everybody yet. But I think even the flyers have even been made. But I'll let the announcement come officially. Because do we normally say it here?
We do.
Okay, well, it's Michelle Yar. It's not Michelle. It's Yar Asantewa. Yay! Yeah. I hope it's still correct because, yeah, it could have changed, I guess. But yes, Yar Asantewa. We're going to be studying a real Pan-African powerhouse, a real fighter, a warrior, leader. So, yeah, do join us again next month. And we will be looking into her life from the beginning to the end. We won't be studying everybody as we did today. And we'll hopefully have some more word sound power associated with Yar Asantewa. And we have been your hosts for the Revolutionary Minds Project. As representatives of the Garvey Village Poets, we're the only two here today, but there are more of us. You are a Garvey Village Poet. If you want to join in this movement, do a study, write some poetry about who you study. You know, you've heard the powerful word sound from Napnai, the lyrical alchemist,
and Stella B.
And yeah, you can do it too. You can't do what Nat could do, but you could do what you could do, and it's just as valuable. And
we'll call you up if you got a poem. We'll call you up.
We'll call you up. You can come up on stage
and perform it. Kimbunga Media Stage.
Yeah. Do come down to Auntie G's African Culture Market this Sunday, the 20th of October. You still can buy your tickets online. If you come, it's more on the door. So do book your ticket and your place to support, not only to support, but to have an amazing time. It's the 3 heavyweight kings. We've got Nubian Jack, who's the first time being a heavyweight king, who's the king of the plaques. He's been placing plaques in honor of our British story here, this history, Black British history here, in places and spaces that are important to these key figures, such as Frank Critchlow and the Mangrove Line, and many others who are plastered around the UK. So he will be doing a presentation. We also have the writer of this book,
the Black History Man.
The Black History Man, Robin Walker himself, will be doing a presentation. He has been one of the 3 heavyweight kings for 10 years. And Tony Warner, who also has a book out, The Black History Walks Man, he will be doing a presentation as well. Shout out to Andrew Mohammed, who's normally with us on the Three Heavyweight Kings roster, but he is in Gambia and he wasn't able to join us this time, but he will be hopefully with us again next year. It's a Garvey Village fundraiser. We are raising money and awareness about a project for building for us, by us. We currently are serving the elderly in Jamaica for their breakfast. So we're supporting the vulnerable there, but we want to do the same thing over here. So support the movement. Get with us. The Auntie Jean's African Culture Market. Get with us. Support us. Find out the information. You can go to Auntie Jean's African Cultural Market. Just Google it and all the information will come up. African Culture Market. So
African with a K.
Yes. Auntie Jean's African Culture Market. Follow us too as well. That's Natnye, Natnye TLA, the Lyrical Alchemist. So Natnye TLA on Instagram.
Stella B.
Yeah, so Stella B is S Belgam, SBELLGAM. That's my app. Follow me there or follow my arts page. Do follow my arts page, support my arts page. It's Stella B's T's, Stella B's BEES, and T's TEES. A lot, but it's recorded, so you can go back and you can rewatch it to get all the data.
Yeah, and like, comment, and subscribe whenever you do see this. Share this.
Is
Kimbunga Media. We've shared a lot of information. We've gone through, and obviously there's a whole like what we've spoken on each of these individuals is these icons, these revolutionary minds. It's just a snippet. So, but it's still a good way for people to get to learn. So. Do share this video. Do share it as a resource. Use it as a resource.
Use it.
Go through the other videos of Kimbunga Media, Revolutionary Minds, and the other interviews that we've had with other esteemed guests, and also with other incredible poets that are part of this project, as well as, like we were saying earlier, go through Kimbunga Media itself, because Sankara has done a whole lot of great work, and you just need to I feel spend more energy in sharing the good works that we are doing,
That's right.
versus
all the
complaining about the negativity that's going on.
Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you to Brother Sankara for allowing us this space. Love, brother, and love to the family. And yeah, we'll see you all at Auntie Jean's African Culture Market on Sunday.
Peace.
Love. Peace.
Wonderful.